Xenobiologist third-rank Ches'kalu had reviewed 412 autopsy reports in her career. None of them had made her request a second opinion from a colleague who was, technically, off shift and asleep. She requested one anyway. "Look at this," she said when Vantrik arrived, still adjusting his optical shroud. "Just look at it." The specimen on the table was human, formally. It had died 2 days ago after a hull breach on Waystation Ilun-7, 6 seconds of vacuum exposure before the emergency seal cycled. Standard procedure was to catalog the body for the family and move on. Explosive decompression was not survivable for any species Ches'kalu had studied. It ruptured capillaries, boiled fluids at the mucous membranes, and generally converted a functioning organism into a lesson about pressure differentials. The human on the table had 2 burst blood vessels in its left eye and a bruise on its collarbone from the safety harness. "That's not possible," Vantrik said. "That's what I said." Then I checked the station log. It was conscious for the first 2 seconds. It tried to help someone else get to the airlock. Vantrik leaned over the corpse. He was old enough and had seen enough species that he did not flinch from the smell, which was itself unusual, since human decomposition ran hot and fast compared to most cold-blooded galactic norms. "May I, please?" He peeled back the epidermis along a pre-existing incision, the one Ches'kalu had made to check subdermal bruising. What lay beneath was, on the surface, unremarkable red muscle, white connective tissue, the too warm wet architecture common to endotherms. But he had spent 30 years cataloging hostile world fauna for the Cartography Institute, and something in him recognized the pattern before his conscious mind caught up. "This is armor tissue," he said slowly. "It's skin. It's both. Look at the collagen density. This isn't defensive skin, this is combat skin. I've seen this exact fiber arrangement in exactly one other place in 30 years of fieldwork." He looked up at her. "Kethrin warboars, the ones we stopped hunting because they'd developed hide that shrugged off plasma cutters." Ches'kalu went very still. "Humans do not fight warboars for a living." "No," Vantrik agreed. "Something worse hunted them for long enough that they built this by accident." It took the Institute 4 months to get proper funding for a homeworld survey, mostly because nobody believed the preliminary reports, and partly because Earth's system government kept insisting, with what the Institute's diplomats swore was genuine confusion, that there was nothing especially remarkable about their planet. "It has weather," one ambassador had said. "Most places do." Dr. Ches'kalu led the survey team herself. She had 3 research goals, ranked by increasing personal dread. 1. Catalog baseline human musculoskeletal resilience across a representative sample. 2. Understand the healing rate anomaly reported by 4 separate medical stations. 3. Figure out why, in the name of every void god the Confederation had ever worshipped, an organism with the reflexes and lifespan of a human had survived long enough to leave its homeworld at all. The third question answered itself on day 1, somewhere over what the humans cheerfully called the savannah. When the shuttle's environmental sensors picked up something the size of a hover tank moving through tall grass at 40 kilometers an hour, and the human pilot, a woman named Odalis, mid-30s, entirely unbothered, said, "Oh, that's just an elephant, they're basically gentle," in the same tone someone else might use to describe a filing cabinet. "Basically," Ches'kalu repeated. "Well, don't get between a mother and her calf, or startle a bull in musht, or corner one. Otherwise they're sweethearts. And if none of those things are avoided, Odalis considered this with the mild, faraway look of someone recalling a mildly interesting news story. Then it steps on you. It happens. We teach kids not to do that. We teach kids not to do that. Ches'kalu wrote the sentence down verbatim in her field notes because she suspected it would end up being the thesis statement of her entire career. By week 3, the survey team had compiled a working list, which the junior researchers had started calling, without irony, the Casual Horrors Index. Human blood clotted in under 15 seconds. An adaptation, the historical record suggested, to a hunting lifestyle that involved a tremendous amount of getting cut open by things with teeth, claws, horns, or each other. Human children were born capable of holding their breath and reflexively not drowning for the first several months of life. A leftover instinct from a period of prehistory nobody could fully explain, which the humans referred to unhelpfully as probably nothing, might be aquatic ape theory, don't quote us. Human immune systems ran hot enough to cook lesser pathogens outright. A fever, they called it, framed as an inconvenience, something you complained about and took medicine for, rather than what it actually was, which was the human body's factory setting for actively boiling invaders alive from the inside. And then there was the sun exposure. "You're telling me," said Vantrick, on day 31, watching a beach full of humans lying flat and immobile under direct stellar radiation, with every apparent sign of contentment, that your species evolved a reward chemical for absorbing lethal radiation. The nearby human, a marine biology postdoc named Marcus, who had been recruited as a local liaison, squinted up at him from under sun lenses. "It's not lethal, it's vitamin D synthesis. You get skin cancer if you overdo it, sure. But in moderation, it feels great. You have a disease named after doing it too much, and you still choose to do it for enjoyment. Everything gives you cancer if you do it too much. Have you seen what breathing does to your lungs over 80 years? Vantrick did not have an answer for this, because it was infuriatingly true, and also because he was distracted by a human child, perhaps 6 years old, by their reckoning, who had fallen from a climbing structure, struck the ground hard enough that the impact registered on his handheld seismic pad from 11 meters away, sat stunned for 4 seconds, and then got back up and kept climbing while a nearby adult offered nothing more than a distracted, "You okay?" without even standing. "Your species doesn't flinch," Ches'kalu said that night, reviewing the day's footage with the whole team. "I've been watching for 6 weeks. You don't flinch from things that would put any other sapient species into cardiac arrest." Marcus, who had joined them for dinner and a translation review, shrugged. "I mean, we flinch. Loud noises, spiders, some of us. Heights. You do not flinch from falling from heights." "Well, no. That one you learn to get over pretty young, because otherwise you never leave the house. Earth's just." He gestured, vaguely, searching for the word, the way a fish might search for a word to describe water. "Earth's just like that. Everything's trying to kill you a little bit all the time, forever. You get used to it." "How?" Ches'kalu asked, very carefully. "Does an entire species get used to everything trying to kill it?" Marcus thought about this for longer than she expected. "The ones who didn't," he said finally, "aren't around to ask." The report Ches'kalu eventually filed with the Confederation Biological Registry ran to 900 pages and was, by her own admission, incomplete, because there were things about human biology that simply defied clean categorization within Confederation taxonomic standards. The standards had not been built with a species like this in mind. Her executive summary, however, was 3 paragraphs long, and it was the only part of the report that every member government actually read. Homo sapiens evolved on a world that does not, by any reasonable confederation metric, qualify as habitable. It is a planet of extremophile megafauna, unstable tectonics, seasonal radiation exposure, and a biosphere that has spent 4 billion years refining increasingly creative methods of predation. Humanity did not adapt to this world so much as it was slowly, brutally edited by it, generation after generation, for approximately 200,000 years, until what remained was an organism capable of shrugging off injuries that would be fatal to nearly every other sapient species we have catalogued. They do not appear to consider this remarkable. This is, in the opinion of this researcher, the single most alarming finding in the entire survey. Recommendation: proceed with extreme diplomatic caution, considerable patience, and a standing medical policy of assuming any injury a human describes as not that bad requires immediate professional attention regardless of their protests to the contrary. 6 months later, on Waystation Ilun-7, a human engineer named Priya Okonkwo Sato caught her hand in a bulkhead door during a minor hull stress event, severing 2 fingers clean at the second knuckle. She swore, wrapped the stumps in a strip of her own shirt, walked herself to medbay under her own power, and asked the attending Catherine nurse with what the nurse's incident report described as inexplicable good cheer, whether they could reattach the fingers or whether she'd just have to get creative with the prosthetic. The nurse, who had read Ches'kalu's report and kept a printed copy of the executive summary pinned above her desk for exactly this kind of moment, did not even look surprised. She just sighed, reached for the regenerative kit, and said, "Sit down, Priya. And no, you may not see the fingers first. You'll just try to convince me they're fine. They're probably fine. They are not fine. They are on the floor. Could be worse," Priya said, sitting. The nurse did not dignify this with a response. She had learned, by now, that there was no version of that sentence a human wouldn't say, and no injury bad enough to make them stop saying it.